Okay, today we're going to go over the array tool. The array tool has two or three real functions that you can work with for the array tool. The two we're going to work with here today are going to be the rectangular array and then the polar array. In order to go ahead and show how the rectangular array will function for us in AutoCAD, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a rectangle and I'm going to just draw a rectangle that has the dimensions of 1 inch by 1 inch. So this is a 1 inch by 1 inch square or 1 inch by 1 inch rectangle, and I want to go ahead and I want to make a series of these that are going to line up in columns and in rows, and I want to go ahead and make 100 of these so that I have 100 of these across my screen. To start the array, I'm going to go ahead and pull down the array tool, and I'm going to select rectangular array, and I'll grab the rectangular array tool. My command line now says select objects. So this rectangle is the object that I'm going to be working with, so I select it, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Now the array tool gives me several options, and the ribbon bar changes into the array dialog box where I can see columns, the distance between, total numbers, rows, distance between, total distance, and then I can also look at the array itself. The array itself has several grip points on the array, and it also has places that I can see distance between. So if I sit over top of this particular arrow and I sit there for a second, I get the distance between center point to center point. If I come to the arrow at the far end of the array, this is telling me how many columns I have. If I select this and actually then just pull, I can now add columns. And if I sit over top of the arrow again, it tells me how many columns I have. I can do this in the row and the columns, and I can also adjust the distance in between the same way. That same information can be adjusted on the ribbon bar. If I wanted to take those 7 columns and make them 5, hit enter. Now it'll take me down to 5 columns. Same way with rows. If I want to have 5 rows, hit enter. It now creates 5 rows. Now, this particular center point, or this called base point, this can also be moved to another point on this host object by selecting the base point tab on the ribbon bar and then relocating it to where you would like to put the new base point. Whenever I start working with arrays, I generally take and put it down at the bottom left-hand corner because it's just easier for me to work with an array in that particular orientation. Okay, rectangular array is fairly straightforward. The only other thing I want to cover with the rectangular array is if I'm going ahead and make a particular array, and let's go ahead and make a big one. If I go ahead and do 10, and I go ahead and do 10, so I have 100 objects here, and let's go ahead and I'll make my distance between 2.0, and I'll also do distance between here 2.0, so they're spaced evenly. And now I'm going to say, okay, this top set of 9 objects I don't want anymore. I want everything else here, but I don't want this top set of 9. If I wanted to go ahead and close this array, and then I wanted to start selecting these to delete them, and I do a panning window over the objects I want to get rid of, what happens is it selects the entire array. Well, I can't do anything to the entire array to get rid of these 9. I have to then do something else. In order to get rid of just 9 pieces or a particular portion of an array, what you have to do is you need to explode the array. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the array once, and then I'm going to go back to my Home tab, and I'm going to select this tool. This is called the Explode tool. In previous versions of AutoCAD, the Explode tool was actually a small stick of dynamite. That was the actual symbol. The symbol now is developed into what looks like a glass box with all of its sides coming apart. But this is the Explode tool. So once I've selected the array, and then I select the Explode tool, now I can alter any piece or portion of this array. So if I wanted to highlight these 9 and delete them, it will let me. Okay? However, this is now no longer an arrayed object. This is just a series of objects. So I can't make changes to this globally. I can just make changes to parts and pieces of the object. Okay? All right. So now, that's the rectangular array. Next, we're going to go over the polar array. And to do this, to start this concept, I'm just going to go ahead and draw a 2-inch circle. This is actually a 4-inch diameter circle, 2-inch radius circle. I'm going to go ahead and draw another circle that is going to be directly above the first one, and this will only be a 1/2 inch in radius. And then I'm going to go ahead and start the idea of creating a polar array around the center point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull down the array tool, and I'm going to slide over here, and I'm going to select the polar array tab. Again, I start looking at my command line. My command line says select objects. So the first thing I'm going to do is select this little circle, because I want to end up making copies of this little circle around the big circle. So once I select that, that's the only object I want to array. I hit enter, and then it says specify center point of array. So I'm going to come down here, hit the center point, and then now it turns on the array tool and it starts to place a series of objects around that circle. Now, what I can do again is go up to the ribbon bar and I can start adjusting. If these 6 items aren't what I want, and I say I want to do 10 items, and then hit enter. So it will then space 10 items out equally around my circle. I can then also tell it that the total distance that I want to fill in the angle around my circle is, let's just say 180. That's going to not be 360. It'll then say, okay, we'll then space these 10 items equally at 180 degrees, not 360 around. So you can really adjust and play with this depending upon what is necessary for your drawing and your particular setting. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to get stuck with one object. Okay, the array tool, I'll go ahead and close this out. The array tool can function with anything. It doesn't have to be circles. I'll go ahead and draw another square here, and I'm not even going to create a circle here for a center point, just to illustrate the idea that I can select this particular rectangle, hit enter, and anywhere I click, the next place I click will become centered to the array. So if I just click here, no real rhyme or reason to doing it, it is going to go ahead and it will then array these particular objects around the center point. I can then also start to begin to add items. If I make 50 of them, it's going to create that array. So you can see how the array tool really is just driven off of any of the information given here. If I close the array, and then I can go ahead and explode this particular array. Go ahead and explode it. Now we just have squares in a pretty interesting pattern. All right. So it's not just one object either. If we were to go ahead and select, let's say we'll do a circle and we'll do a rectangle around that, we can then grab the array tool, highlight, hit enter, grab a point, and it doesn't matter. It can do multiple objects in the array. So if you have a complicated part that you have to make several objects in an array, you can do that all together. So hopefully this will take you through the array tool and get you through whatever drawing you need to do.